ride with me in my foul life.
Podcast world, what's going on? Chap Belling back at you, the Foul Life Podcast. We're going to have part 2 of my new good buddy, Russ Higbie, Oklahoma, the Law Dawg Hunting Lodge. You heard part 1 with him. We got into his passion of waterfowling, a little bit of his early story, his childhood, how he came across this unbelievable homestead, farmstead, where this lodge sits, where we're staying right now. Just a cool place. Today's episode of the Foul Life Podcast is brought to you by our friends. This thing is called the Flask Cap. Y'all need to check it out. Talk about a cool ass tumbler cup, but it's the lid that's so innovative. You can put your mixer and your ice in your tumbler cup. Say you're going to a boat, say you're out on the lake, say you're at the beach where they don't allow glass. You can put 6 to 9 shots, depending on what size you get, of your favorite spirit in the lid. And then with one push of a button, it'll dispense a shot into your mixer and ice down in the tumbler. Shake it around a little bit, you got yourself a cocktail. So it prevents you from bringing glass bottles of vodka, Jack Daniels, gin, whatever your choice is, out on the boat, taking a chance of breaking them, cutting your foot, your hand, whatever it is. Check out Flask Cap, Flaskap. Drew and the entire crew are just innovative. They're awesome people, and we truly are honored to be part of the Flask Cap family. Today's episode of the Foul Life Podcast is also brought to you by our friends at the one and only Avery Greenhead Gear. We've been shooting lesser Canada geese in Oklahoma over the new bolts, over the lessers, over the commercial grade XD honkers. We are having a blast over these decoys, and the thing that sets them apart is that they truly are first in finishing with their texture, their detail, they're anatomically correct. They are so perfect now with all of the tail loops built into them to be able to carry so many at a time, saving you a bunch of that valuable time, whether it's in the morning setting up or in the afternoon tearing down. Greenhead Gear continues to innovate the decoy market, so check them out for all of your duck and goose decoy needs. Also ground blinds, dog blinds, panel blinds, you name it. Avery Greenhead Gear and the Banded family of brands are at the top of their game right now, and we are humbled and honored to have them as part of our arsenal and partnership. So let's get to part 2 with Mr. Russell. What's up, my man?
How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing just great.
It's cold here.
Yes, it is.
Why?
Well, you know, we were at 80 degrees day before yesterday. So, you know, if you don't like the weather in Oklahoma, stay a day and it'll change.
Do you expect it to get this cold in Oklahoma?
Yes, I do. This is January and February are cold months. And we have, but luckily it doesn't stay very long. Just a day or so.
But they're saying it's around -5 with the wind chill.
Right.
Air temperature is going to get down to about 10 degrees tonight. Do you consistently see it get that low to where it dips in the negatives, you know, -5 with the wind chill? Does that happen? I don't think I've ever been in Oklahoma when it's been this cold.
Yeah, it's you know, if you get an Arctic blast, it'll last, like I say, 2 or 3 days. You definitely want to drip your sinks.
It's going to make the hunting good, though, I think.
Yeah, I think it will. Move the birds, sure will.
New ducks coming down from Nebraska,
yeah.
Kansas. I think that whole cold front that's going across the central part of the country right now is going to bring a lot of new birds.
It's been real slow. Hope this, you know, perks up.
So honestly, what do you think of that taco today? We made Canada Goose tacos. We got our meat your maker meat grinder out today, and just went to town with some pork fat and Canada Goose breast meat, and we're using it for a spaghetti tonight. We're getting ready to go start our spaghetti right now, but just to give you a little taste today, I threw down on a couple tacos for you. What'd you think of them?
Well, when one of the guys came over and said, come over and get a goose taco, I kind of drug my feet because I wasn't too excited about eating a goose taco. And I thought, well, I better get on over there. So I went over and sat down, and you served one up. And the first bite, I couldn't believe it. It was just really that good. And so, you know, I tried to contain myself, but I had to have 2. So they were really good.
You made a comment that you could sell them things.
Yeah, I swear you could. They're that good.
It's such a good way to get rid of a ton of geese, too,
yes,
right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
I mean, you got a lot of people staying at your lodge all the time, and now with the ability to get that grinder out and put in some pork fat and just, I mean, literally those tacos took me minutes to make.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a cakewalk. I mean, as long as you take care of that meat from the field. People they take that part for granted. They'll let them sit around.
Yeah.
They'll let them get in the sun too much. You got to take care of that meat. I'm not saying that you can't hang ducks and geese for a couple days and clean them, but I like to get that meat off the bone and taken care of right away.
Yeah, if you fillet it off and prepare it and get it ready, you'll be a lot better off. Don't leave it sitting around a day or two. You'll have a problem.
I don't like that. I like getting it done right away. But I wanted to get in a little bit of, we touched on your career. Mm-hmm. You were military, Vietnam vet.
Yeah, well, I had, after I got out of college, I went into the Army for 2 years. And then when I got out of that, I went into a reserve group. And I stayed in the reserves about 13 and a half years until I went to work for the State Bureau of Narcotics. And then my time just wasn't my own anymore. I was an officer. And, you had certain responsibilities with military duties, and it was just a little bit too difficult. So I resigned my commission and got out, and have kind of regretted that, really, over the years, because I really did enjoy it. I was in a real good unit. I was in a 12 Special Forces group there in Oklahoma City, and it was a hot unit. It was fun. Made a lot of parachute jumps and a lot of just about any school you wanted to go to, and you're capable of going anywhere or doing anything because it was the unit was like it was, Special Forces unit. So anyway, stayed in the service like that for all those years, and then I went to work for the State Bureau of Narcotics in the early 80s, about 82. Prior to that, I'd spent 5 years with the Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office, where I really kind of, earned my stripes there, learned police work. I had a degree in business education and had taught school and coached for 5 years prior to that. And just all of a sudden, just one day thought, I don't want to do this teaching. I don't want to coach anymore. All my family were teachers and coaches. And I just thought, well, I want to do something else. So I decided to get into police work. And I applied for federal jobs and state jobs and county jobs. And finally, the county called and said they got a position open. So I went down there. And I worked my way through from the criminal division, or from the civil division over to the criminal division, and from the criminal division down to the major crimes division. And I was in heaven. I thought that was about the best job I'd ever had. They worked all the heinous crimes: rape, robbery, murder, all those good crimes that I enjoyed really doing. And one day my lieutenant came to me and said, "We're going to send you out to the sheriff wants to send you out to the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics to go to their drug school." And I said, "Oh, don't send me out there." I said, "I can't even take an aspirin." I said, I'm not your man." And they said, "No, he's going to send you." So I said, "Well, all right." So I went out there, and they had just split off. We only had one agency in Oklahoma at the time, the State Bureau of Investigation, and the drug problem was so growing so much in Oklahoma that they split that agency off and made a State Bureau of Narcotics. And they were just beginning that agency, and so they were looking for people to go to work. And I went to the school and finished up. It was about a 3-week school, and what it was a school that brought sheriffs and deputies and chiefs and police departments employees in and taught them how to make a drug case that was worthy of prosecuting in courts. And we had a good reputation for that, the Bureau did, and so that's what the school was all about. So I went to that school and came back to the sheriff's office, and about 2 days later, the director of the Bureau and the chief agent knocked on the door and signaled for me to come out. And so I went out, and they said, "Do you have a degree?" And I said, "Yeah, I've got a bachelor's degree, and I've got a master's degree in criminal justice." And they said, "Well, golly, that's great." Said, "You did real good in our school." Said, "Do you want to go to work for us?" And I said, "Yep, I sure do." So that was my introduction and my decision. It was made just like that. And so within a month or so, I was employed with the State Bureau of Narcotics. And I remember going to the sheriff and telling him, I said, "I'm going to going to work for the State Bureau of Narcotics." He said, "Well, I didn't send you out there so that you could go to work for them. I need help down here." I said, "Well, I'm going to go out there." So I did, and stayed. I just stayed 30 years to see if I was going to like it.
Give me an idea of the Special Forces part of the military career before we get into this narcotics, because I love the idea of that, 30 years to see if you liked it. Obviously, you became very good at it, but what was the Special Forces? You're doing parachute jumps, you're doing Halo stuff, but you're a Vietnam vet. What was the Special Forces? What were the responsibilities of this unit?
Well, the unit that I was in was a headquarters unit and a replacement unit, and they would take individuals and put them in active duty Army units, for filler, and so we had a lot of people coming and going, out of our unit doing just that. The thing that I really liked about it was that since it was a priority unit, you could go just about to any school that the Army had to offer. You could attend the jump school, which was mandatory if you was going to be in the Special Forces. You had to go through the jump school, and then you could hone your talents there and become a jump master, where you pushed people out the door, and but you could go to Ranger School, you could go to Pathfinder School, you could go to Jungle School. All these schools were available for you to go to, so that you could just continue to hone your skills. And then the basic course for Special Force was at Fort Bragg, where you actually earned your patch for your beret. And after you got all that, then you were qualified. You were a qualified Special Forces officer. So
Army Special Forces is Green Berets
Yes.
and Delta Force.
No, Delta Force is separate.
But Delta Force is part of the Army, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. But Special Forces is just a brand of its own, a bunch of its own. President Kennedy granted the right for the Special Forces in about 1962 or 64, somewhere around there, to wear a green beret, to be a distinctive part of the uniform, and so it lives on today. And of course, there's a song. Barry Sadler sings a song. Green Beret song. John Wayne has made a movie, Green Beret. So the beret is the token, is the high, if you get the beret, you win the beret. That's quite an honor, to be able to have that.
So you're a Green Beret?
I was, yes.
Wow. Mm-hmm. But Delta Force is just totally separate.
Yes.
Than the Berets.
Yes. Yeah.
You did not go to Delta Force.
No, I wasn't Delta Force. And it'd be like SEAL Team 6 or 3 or 5 or whatever they've got,
Yeah.
It's a different, that bunch is in the Navy, they're Navy SEALs. And so the Army, each branch of service has a little bit different. The Air Force has a pararescue, I think,
Yeah.
a little different. So you're just trained a little bit different. The Special Forces were forces that were a training group, if you will, in Vietnam. They trained up indigenous people, to fight the battles themselves and to support them, and so on and so forth. And that was their objective.
Missions. You were involved in a lot of missions as Special Forces. Do you look back on the military career and that part of your life? Do you miss it when you get out? Does it scare you that you went through? What's the mentality though that looking back on it, were you just like a balls to the wall kind of no fear son of a bitch that didn't care, or do you wish that you would have did things a little bit different, or what did that military career do as far as setting the path for the rest of your life?
Well, I think that I think those people are a little bit daredevilish. I look back on my life and think, how I started out. I remember one time out at the farm, my grandfather had a hay barn, and my sister and I were in the top of that hay barn, and she dared me to jump out holding international umbrella that was on my back of my grandfather's tractor for shade. And so I did, and the first few seconds, it was really a neat sensation, floating to the ground, and then the umbrella inverted, and I pile drived right into the ground and hurt my wrist. But I just think that I don't know whether it's a dare or what it is. It's in your blood, but it's just one toe over the line. It seems like, and those people are. I think it was a natural progression for me to be in the service and want to be in a Special Forces unit or an airborne unit. And then when I got out, police work seemed to call my name.
But having the daredevil kind of life, when you're actually there now, and you have to go up in an airplane, and you're jumping out of a perfectly good airplane, but you're doing this to protect the freedoms of the American people and the country. But you still have to have this mentality of like, well, I could still be doing something else with my life. What is the mentality that makes a special forces? Because when you talk to, I've got to hunt with a lot of them, and I'm honored to be able to do so, from Navy SEALs to Delta Force, a lot of different individuals. And they always say that the thing they hated the most was not being able to go back again when it ended for them. Like, that's a different kind of mentality, in my opinion, of you got to have a little bit of craziness to you. Like, you're putting yourself in harm's way at all times. So do you ever look back, Russ, and be like, holy shit, what the hell was I thinking?
No, not really. I mean, it was just a stride that I took, and I really, really enjoyed it. But when I passed that up and got into police work, that even became more of a challenge to me, especially working undercover.
Great transition. I like that.
Yeah.
Undercover is something, in my opinion, that can be like anxiety could creep in a heartbeat. Like, are they going to catch me kind of deal? Are they going to figure me out kind of?
Exactly.
And then the other part of undercover is that it's never over, really, because if you go into some place now, you might see somebody that, oh my God, I locked that dude up at some time, or
That's right.
Is he going to recognize me? Does he know who I was? Did the word get out? How does that all take place in this kind of career? How does it all stay under wraps for the rest of your life? Does it ever get out? Have you ever had any encounters of like somebody that you may have put away or you were undercover and you made a big bust on them? Has it ever come back to bite you in the ass at all?
Well, I mean, I've had several encounters like that. One of them, when I was actually working undercover, I had worked, like I say, 5 years at the county sheriff's office before I went over to the state bureau. And so I'd put a lot of people in jail at the county, and also taken a ton of them to court for their trials and so on. You escort them down and back up. You sit there with them all day. And I was working undercover on a particular methamphetamine case in Moore, Oklahoma. And I went into a business where this guy was that was the target, and I purchased methamphetamine from him, and did it on several occasions. And he would come with more and more amounts each and every time. Finally reached a point to where he couldn't produce any more, couldn't bring any more, and so I got an arrest warrant and went out. And when I went to him, I said, when he walked in the door, he said, "I know who you are now." And I said, "Who's that?" And he said, "Well, you put me in jail, and you took me to court one time when I was in the sheriff's office." He said, "You're a police officer." And I said, "Yes, that's right. And you're under arrest." And he said, "No, I'm not. You're not an officer now." Because during the exchange of conversation, I had told him that he said, "I think I know you from somewhere down at the courthouse or something." And I said, "Well, if you won't tell anybody, I'll tell you the truth. I was a deputy sheriff, but I got caught for stealing money out of the property room." And I said, "I got fired, and I'm on probation." And he bought that story. Except when I came back with a warrant and I showed him my badge, but he didn't hardly believe that I was even then a police officer. So that was one of them, that was kind of an interesting.
So he had busted you from the get-go.
Yeah, he knew who I was, but continued to sell me drugs.
So did you come up with that story on your own just right away?
I just thought of it just in the instant when it happened. I thought,
you're wearing a wire.
Yeah.
So when you get back to the van or the office, your other fellow officers or your commander go, "What the hell? How'd you come up with that all of a sudden?"
Yeah, and I mean, you have to be pretty creative sometimes.
Yeah.
I remember one other time I was buying heroin from an individual downtown in Oklahoma City, and I'd made 2 or 3 buys from him. And my cover story was that my wife was sick was on heroin, and she needed a fix each and every morning. And so I went down there, and I'd go down there in the mornings and buy $400 or $500 worth of heroin from this particular person. And on this one day, I came back to the office, and my boss called me and said, "Go back down there and buy another batch of heroin, and we're going to arrest that guy." And I said, "I can't go back down there." I said, "I go every morning. He's used to seeing me in the morning, and it's not going to be a cool deal at all." And he said, "Yeah, you go on back down there." I said, "That's just part of the deal." I went, "Okay." So I went down, and sure enough, when I got down there, he said, what are you doing back down here?" And I told him, I had to score some more dope for my wife. And he said, "Well, sit down." He was sitting at a card table, and there was 2 or 3 people sitting around the room with him. And there was a stainless steel 357 on this table right over by his right hand, and I sat over to his left, and he said, "How much do you need now?" And I said, "Oh, a couple more hits." And he said, "Okay." He said, "I need to ask you a question real quick." He said, "Are you the man?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "Are you the man?" And I said, "No, I'm not the man." He said, "Well," and he reached over and picked that 357 up and stuck it right in my cheek and said, "Well, if you are the man, you're dead. I'll blow your head off right now." And I said, "No, I tried my best. I am not the man." And we carried an undercover billfold and credentials and stuff on our person. And he told this other guy, I said, "Reach in his pocket and get his billfold." So he did, and I had an undercover driver's license and all the proper credentials for undercover stuff, And he looked at it and said, "Oh, okay." And I don't know whether he ever really believed me or not, but he lowered the gun, and it was in the summer. And I got up and started the door, and I was so shook up.
You're sweating like a
I was sweating so bad that the tape that I'd used to, that gray tape to put that mic on, that body mic, turned loose. And it turned loose just as I exited the door, and it kind of dropped out of my shirt and stuff.
Oh, shit.
I kind of tucked it back in and got the heck out of there. And, I was obviously shook bad, and I got in my car and drove down the road a little ways and pulled over, and some of the surveillance agents said, "God, we heard everything that went on." I said, yeah, I know. And my boss came up and said, "Well, that's just part of the deal. You're going to have things like that happen." I said, "Oh, well."
No thanks.
Yeah.
So what stops a guy with a stainless steel 357 from tearing your shirt open and looking? If he thinks you might have something going on, why don't they go that far?
I don't know why he did it. We have had problems like that, or we had problems like that, but it was just one of those deals where, I don't know whether you could shine it on and say it's a heart monitor. I don't know what you would do. You'd have to really come with something pretty good, because they would have you, at that point.
Yeah. So what?
Yeah.
You were doing heroin buys from this guy.
Mm-hmm.
What made him think that? I'm trying to figure out, like, all of a sudden is because you had him pegged of, like, if I go down there and it's not in the morning, he's going to think, is that why he acted like that? Because you just showed up out of the blue?
I'd already been there that morning and scored dope, and that had been my pattern. And why was I coming back?
But why would your commander put you in harm's way like that, though?
Well, you'll have to ask him that. I don't know.
That's crazy shit. Like, you knew what you were doing. You kind of had the instincts of this guy.
Yeah, and generally the commanders and the people above you and so on will say, if you don't feel good about doing the deal, don't do it.
Yeah.
And I didn't, but they said do it, so I went on.
It almost
and did
cost you your life.
Could have.
So what are you the one that goes back and busts this guy at the bus time?
Well, that's even a part 2 of that story. We got the warrant, and we were going to go back down, and something happened. I don't know, and so it kind of got put on the back burner for a while, and about 2 or 3 weeks later, from over around Tulsa, Claremore, Oklahoma, called one day and said, "Are you looking for this person?" And I said, "Sure am." They said, "Well, he's over here in the hospital." Said, "Come to the police department, we'll take you over there." And I said, "Okay." So my partner and I jumped in the car and drove over to Claremore and got there, and they said, "Officer will drive you down there, you can follow him." So we did, and we got down to the hospital, and when we got there, they said, "Yeah, come on, he's right in this room in here." And when we walked in, he was laying there on a gurney with a sheet over him.
Dead?
Yeah, he was dead, and he had wire on his wrist and ankles, and they'd found him floating in the Verdigris River. They'd put building blocks on his legs and arms and submerged him, and of course he'd been eating a little bit and so on. It was just a miserable. But we didn't need to arrest him. He was gone.
So he must have pissed off the wrong guy above him.
Yeah.
He must have done something, because doesn't it like go in levels with these drug dealers?
Yeah.
Aren't there like you get to know the dealer, and then you don't really bust him, or you might wait a minute to bust him to become an accomplice, or
right.
So when you, as an undercover agent, give me some ideas of some of your what do you call them? Is it your costume, or what is it? What do you refer to it as what you dress up like?
Well, it just depends on, not only do you go against people like that are, kind of street people, but, we did a lot of deals, we had politicians that we went against, bank presidents.
That you knew were in the drug game?
That what?
That were in the drug game?
Yeah, they'd sell to you. I had teachers. I bought drugs from a chemistry teacher at a university.
Like Breaking Bad, the show.
Yeah, yeah.
He was a teacher. So your disguise would
blend in with
whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
So if you're going against a teacher, you got a pocket protector in and look kind of like a little nerd kind of like guy, or what do you dress like?
No, you would just dress contemporary, just like a student or whatever, and nothing outlandish, if you're going to if you're going to go down to a bank, to a president's office, you might have a sport coat on or something like that. If not, and you're going to work drugs out of a club or on the street, then you dress appropriately like that.
So what was with your mentality of the daredevil, you're jumping out of airplanes and you're special forces and you've been there, done that. You don't have a whole lot of fear, but you also are a family man. Yes. You have a kid, you have a wife, you have a big, immediate family. Mm-hmm. What was the best part of it? Was it the encounters under disguise? Was it going to make the bust and surprising them, being like, "Hey, man, got you"? Did it ever come down to where when you did bust them, Russ, you almost liked the person because of all the dealings you had with them at a time, to where you almost developed like a kinship or a friendship with them because they might have been kind of neat people, right?
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden you're like, "Holy shit!" It felt like I was busting a friend in a way,
like your brother or sister or whatever. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's, you do build a relationship with them. In fact, I talked a little while ago about that, but I've had 2 or 3 times people say, "Oh, you're just kidding. You're not the estate agent."
After you made the bust, they're just like, "No."
Yeah. You pull your badge out and show them and say, "Where'd you get that?" Well, I was issued that. I'm a state officer. No, you're not either. You're R.A. Bryant. Using your undercover name to you, or something like that, and they say, "Quit kidding, really. Come on, let's go." Whatever, And you said, "No, you're under arrest." You see those guys over in that booth right there? Yeah, they're agents also, and they're here to back me up in case you get squirrely. So let's go. And they'll say, "Well, I can't believe this," but they do.
So you just escort them out in cuffs, or do you walk them out?
No, you just walk them out. You hope they don't get nuts. We have had them. I've had problems with them before, but generally you can kind of talk to them a little bit and get them out. And
so is that 357 in your cheek? Is that the closest you came to getting squirrely like that?
Yeah, I think that was probably the most. There were several shootings. I was involved in several shootings over my career. So
like live gunfights.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Did it escalate because they caught on to you?
Yes. Well, it always comes down to, some go to jail and some you have to take to jail. And those that you take to jail, that's where the problem begins. Some just not going to go. And
they pull out a gun and try to get away from you,
mm-hmm.
and try to kill you.
Yeah. Well, we did a survey with our agents, and the guy that was doing the survey made a report at one of the agency meetings one time and said that about 87% to 90% of the people that we're dealing with are carrying guns, have them on them during the transaction. And of course, we had ours. They're hard to hide. When you work like that, you never surrender your credentials or your weapon ever. And but it's hard to when it comes right down to it, to produce your weapon in a timely manner. Sometimes you have to kind of distract them. I've developed several different things. I would shortchange them maybe on money, and I'd say, "Well, here, you count it," and get their head down where you could get your hands free for a second, or in a car, say, "Uh-oh, who's that?" And they'd look that way for just an instant. Where you could get your weapon out and go to work. So it was just a series of figuring out what's going to work, almost like hunting. well, we need to move the decoys, you know. Well,
You are hunting in a way.
The wind's changed, so we need to do this, or listen, we don't have enough brush on the front of our blind, or something like that. I had a guy that wrote an article. He's now since gone, but died awful early. But was a wildlife writer for the Oklahoma paper, and he wrote an article on me one time, and he said. After I'd retired, he said, and started this business, he said, yeah, Russ has moved from busting dopers to busting ducks, and had that in the paper, and he got a lot of comments. I thought it was a pretty clever little comment
cool.
for him. Yeah.
Do you recall any mistakes that you made that you look back at and be like, holy shit, I can't? Did you like say your wrong name or like mix names up to where they tried to catch on to that, or they looked at you different? I mean, do you remember any mistakes you made?
Oh, there's plenty of them, you know. I mean, it's just like anything else. You make mistakes every day, and you try to limit those, because if you make too many of them in this business, you know, it costs you your life. So you're very, very careful. You do a lot of preparation. You think through the whole thing. You try to prepare a operational order, you know, to set the mission and what it is that you're going to need, and then the last part of that operational order is what happens if it goes south? What are you going to do? You know, so you have a lot of thought and a lot of preparation with regards to what if, you know, everything falls apart. What do you do? You know, and you rehearse that over and over and over. And that eliminates a lot of the mistakes. You know, if you get in a hurry on a drug deal, you're probably going to get in trouble.
Did you ever get in a hurry?
Oh, probably. But I, you know, was able to get out from underneath whatever it was. My military training had taught me that, you know, prior planning prevents poor performance. And so I really paid attention to what was going on. I would worry if I was undercover to somebody and they'd say, well, meet me at such and such club. You know, that always worried me, because I had taught high school, and coached in Oklahoma City.
So you might see a student.
Might see somebody that I knew, yeah. And I did one time at a club. And they said, hey, Russ, how are you doing?
When you say club, is this a regular bar? Is this like a dance club?
Yeah, bar. Uh-huh.
Yeah, bar.
Yeah. I was buying cocaine from this person, and had met them there 2 or 3 times, and they kept wanting to go back there, and I said, you know. And so this one time I went back, and there were 2 or 3 people over there that knew me, and I just we would go to the restroom to do the deal. We wouldn't do it right at the table, so got up and started by, and walked by these people, and I saw them and went, oh no, and they said, hey Russ, what's going on? And I just walked on by. The guy said, do they know you? No, man, I don't know, you know, I don't know who that is, you know. And of course, the drug deal was more important than finding out who that was, but it could have been a problem.
Hell yeah.
You know, it could have been a problem. So there's just different things like that you run into and handle right on the spot. One other, I remember one time I was working in northeastern part up around Enid, and I was undercover to a guy buying 5 pounds of marijuana, and he said, well, meet me at the Sonic Drive-In. And I said, all right. So I met him at the Sonic Drive-In. Well, I was driving an undercover truck and had it rigged up with the recording stuff so that if he got in, we could, you know, it'd help on the case. And I pulled up, and he was across, in the speakers was across, and I signaled for him to come over. You know, kind of the rule was you didn't want to get out of your car and get in his, and you didn't want to get in somebody's car and then go somewhere with them. You just don't do that, because that's problems. And so I said, come on over here. No, you come over here. I said, no, just come here. I've got the money. You know, I got the money. So he said, all right. So he walked over there and got in. And lo and behold, if my wife and daughter didn't pull up at the Sonic right across from me while the deal was going down.
No freaking way.
And I made eye contact with her, and she went, like, you know, almost spoke to me, and my heart just.
What were you disguised as?
I had a beard and just, you know, jeans and a jean jacket.
Did you leave the house like this with your wife seeing you, or did you go to the precinct and get done up over there?
I went to the office, out of the bureau, and it was in the afternoon or early evening, and she had told me that she was going to be out of town, going to go visit a friend, but, you know, who would have ever thought that you'd have picked the same
At the
in the
same
whole state of
exact time.
Oklahoma, go to the same drive-in restaurant at the very same time. So the surveillance agent that was sitting with me, you always had a surveillance agent. He was down 3 or 4 spots, and he saw her drive in and looked at her, got her attention, and went like this, put his finger over his mouth like, shh, don't. And so she pulled in and stayed about, 8 or 10 counts, backed up and left, thank goodness.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Yeah, but,
You develop a hatred for drugs in a job like this?
I did, yes, especially the marijuana, because I administered that marijuana project for the state for 15 years, and we really made a dent in it. I mean, we went all over the state and got officers from police departments and sheriff's offices and trained them up, and we had quite an effort going in the summer, cutting, slashing, and burning, and getting rid of it and making arrests. And then for the law to change like it has with regards to medical marijuana, I had no idea we had so many sick people in Oklahoma. You can go to any one of those hundreds of dispensaries and just sit there, and people just in and out of that door, allegedly seeking drugs for medication, which is, and I know that's not right. But, and then the bond issue that has come up, no bond, and then defund police and so on. So it's just been kind of a disappointing last several years, to the point to where really, truthfully.
So do you think that marijuana should not have been outlawed? I mean, made legal? Because it's been made legal in a lot of states, even if it's not just for medical purposes. Well,
they approach it with medically, and then, of course, they switch it over to try to make it to recreational. So it's just a stepping stone, and I think you just have to stop it and say, no, it's just not legal. DEA, it's a Schedule I drug, and a Schedule I drug by definition is a drug that has high medical abuse and no medical acceptance. It's not used for anything right now. And so the DEA has still got it as a Schedule I drug. It's illegal. But yet the states have voted to allow it medically. So it's a real cloudy issue. On one hand, it's federally against the law, but the other, the state will allow it. So how do you operate under those rules? It's difficult.
Very.
Difficult.
What's wrong with the drug, in your opinion?
In what?
What's wrong with marijuana? What is it? Is it a stepping stone drug?
It's a gateway drug.
It's a gateway drug, but why can't alcohol be looked at as the same thing?
Well,
what is the difference? Why do people always say, "Oh, well, you drink; it's just as bad as marijuana"? At one time, alcohol was illegal.
Yeah,
you got to be 21 to have a legal drink in America.
Right.
What's wrong? I've never smoked marijuana. I've never needed it. I've never been been that guy that needed an edible. I've never had done any of that. Uh-huh. But there's a lot of people out there that say things like, it's way better for you than alcohol is. There's no hangover with it. And I'm like, no, man, I think it kills your brain cells quite a bit. Yeah. But you develop a hatred for it. But is it worse than alcohol? And should alcohol be illegal if marijuana should be illegal? Well,
alcohol is alcohol, and marijuana is a drug, and there's two distinctions: a drug and an alcohol. Of course, they legalized alcohol years and years ago, and that's what they're in the process of doing with this drug. So, no, I don't think it should be allowed. I think they should stop it and not let it go any further. Like I say, it's a gateway drug. It leads to others. I remember one time I was doing a paper for my master's degree, and I was thinking, what in the world can I write on? And we had a procedure at the Bureau that when you arrested somebody, you brought them in and did a history sheets and a rights waiver and gave them the opportunity to talk to you if they wanted to. For example, if I arrested you and I said, okay, I'm going to put you in jail tonight, but what I want you to think about is if you want to cooperate here and try to do something, maybe we can strike a deal. Well, about 80 or 90% of them will take that deal, and that's how you build your informant base. And so on this particular case, I remember having a person that had started with marijuana and on this rights waiver sheet that I looked at, had gone right on up and told me during the interview when I was interviewing him and doing this rights waiver, he said, I started with marijuana, and he said it was just so exciting and so exhilarating that I just went on. And he said, I'm a hardcore cocaine or a meth user now. We had a real bad meth problem in Oklahoma. And so I thought, well, that might be interesting to write a paper on that. So I took 100 of those rights waivers and sheets and separated them, and 96 of them listed on there, because you asked that question, what drugs do you do? What did you start with? They all started with marijuana. So I wrote my paper on and correlated, marijuana versus other and harder illegal drugs. And they were, they all started with token marijuana.
So you have a master's degree too?
I do.
Holy shit, you've done it all.
I've got a master's degree in criminal justice administration.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah.
And your thesis was on marijuana as a gateway drug to...
That's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you ever run into a dealer that you were buying from ask you to participate, to check the quality, or, hey, you got to try some of this Coke, or put your finger out, or you walk in and they got a piece of glass like the movies with a razor blade and they're cutting it up right there? Yes. Did you ever encounter that where they insisted on you trying the product?
Sure.
Did you have to do it as an undercover agent, even though you hated drugs, or did you get clever again and find a way out?
I found a way out. You have to. You can't enforce the law if you're breaking it. And I remember once was a...
so you can't go undercovers deep enough, because then they can come back and say, wait, you snorted cocaine with me?
That's true.
Oh, really? So you can never go and test the product to get even deeper undercover, to gain more credibility and trust with the guy?
No. If you put yourself in as a user, then they're going to give you the opportunity to use. If you put yourself in as a, somebody that's kind of a middleman or going to move the product or so on and so forth and stick with that, then you're a lot better off. You can say, no, I don't do the drug. I just sell it, or I move it, or I've got friends that, So don't put yourself in a position where you give them the opportunity to say, well, you do it, so let's fire one up or snort a line.
Wow. Like you
have to guide your conversations pretty closely.
So yeah, that's where your education and your people skills
and your training,
and all that comes in. So what were the percentages of your dealers, male to female? Was there ever a female that you bought from?
Oh gosh, yes, sure, yeah. I would say 70-30 men.
But there were female dealers, and these female dealers, are they targeting a certain demographic of a customer base? Are they put in that position, or are they all working for a bigger drug lord?
Yeah, the money, you got to follow the money. I mean, that's the girls will be working for somebody. Very few of them have their own lab if it's meth, or cocaine conspiracy or whatever. They'll be moving the drug. They won't be, manufacturing it. We had a real problem in the late or 90s through the early 2000s of methamphetamine. I mean, we were having I remember 500 labs a year.
Wow. That
we were going into, and our guys and girls agents were. We didn't. It was several years before we observed any kind of safety regulations. Those chemicals are carcinogenic. They'll kill you. And we'd go right in there and breathing. I can remember standing on the outside of a house and getting ready to go in and bust a lab and say, okay, are y'all ready to go? 1, 2, 3. And on the last 3, you'd go, draw a breath and run in and yell, scream, get down, state police, whatever, and then get back to the door and get another breath and go back in.
Really?
Yeah. So eventually they sent us to a SBE, Self Breathing Apparatus School, and of course that didn't work very well because all the guys had beards, and you had a lot of leaks in your mask, but it helped a little bit, and there were some things you had to go through that school, 40-hour school, and finish it up before you could go into a lab. We finally enacted that procedure and policy.
It seems to me with the drug game that, and I'm just going off of like well, there's a show on A&E called The First 48. I watch it like it's going out of style. I love it. I think it's the best TV made because it's so real. They can't fake that shit. You just can't fake it. There's no like, hey, stand over here and do a cutaway. This is real. And it's real time. It's very well done, but a lot of it's coming out of Tulsa, just right down the street from where we sit right now.
It is.
A couple hours away in eastern Oklahoma. It seems to me like, I'd have to go back and see this. I think 90% of the freaking homicides are because of drugs. Almost every case you watch on that show is because of a drug deal gone bad, or a guy owes this guy money, or he was caught, stealing, or he was caught selling on the wrong corner, or, it's something to do with collected money because of drugs or part of the drug game, it seems to me.
You're right.
Is that what you experienced in your career?
And there was a long-time DA in Oklahoma County named Bob Macy, and he was a really good guy. And I remember him talking, him giving several classes and so on. And I remember him saying one time that 95% of the cases that they file in Oklahoma County, which is a large county, 95% of those cases are drug-oriented cases. Just like you said, it might be a house burglary, but why? Well, they needed money for drugs. It might be a concealing stolen property, but they had the property and stuff because they needed money for drugs. So all that drug industry drove all the other crime. Yes.
And it continues to do that.
Yes, it continues today. What can you do about it? I don't know. Certainly not legalize marijuana as a medicinal product. And I'm not saying there's not, there's 435 chemicals that are unidentified in a marijuana plant. I studied it for a long time. I know what, and there
435 that are unidentified?
Yeah, 435 chemicals in a marijuana, in a marijuana plant. And, they study those things, and there may be something, it may be real good for glaucoma, for cancer, or from something, but if it is, let's put it through DEA or drug enforcement, drug tests, and make it legal and do it right. I'm not saying that there's nothing. I mean that there's, it's a horrible, horrible drug. There may be some properties in it that are good, but this making it legal for edibles and grow your own plants in your house and so on and so forth is not the answer.
Not the answer.
No.
One of the, I don't know if it's funny, but with COVID, all of these dispensaries, they call them, in where we live in Nevada, it's legal. So every billboard now is get an eighth of weed for $25 or $40 weed. I mean, there are billboards everywhere. Just shows the marijuana, best weed in Reno kind of shit, right? Well, during COVID, there was no transactions allowed within these stores. They had to be all parking lot transactions. So follow me here for a second, Russ. You go from having illegal drugs in the world, where a lot of these drug deals are a window rolls down and they put this bag across and you collect the money and you go, it's in a dark parking lot. I drove by these dispensaries and there was a person in a mask walking a drug out, a window being rolled down, put into the car. So it was like, it was COVID caused it to go back to a parking lot drug deal. Yeah. And then the money exchange, the credit card would come out and they'd swipe it in their little iPad or whatever. But I just started thinking to myself, how unbelievable is that it went full circle, that an illegal drug deal now is an illegal, but they're doing it the exact same way through the car window.
Parking lot in a dark spot.
It was just crazy to me to see it. But yeah, I think that the bigger picture thing is, what does it lead to? You could have somebody that smokes marijuana and they're a very peaceful person and they might be very productive. And I've always had a mindset of like, marijuana causes lethargicness or laziness. I've always thought that myself. I don't know if it does or not 100%, but in my opinion, I've always looked at it as that kind of drug, that it's just kind of like a drug that puts you on that level of not being very productive. But again, there's a ton of cases out there that prove that wrong, I'm sure.
Right.
But it just seems like drugs build into a lot bigger things.
Well, and marijuana is very spatial too, meaning that I remember a test that we did, or that we had the availability to get, was they had airplane pilots, and they divided the room and they gave one group of 6 or 8 pilots, a placento, fake marijuana, and then the others had the drug, and then they put them in that aircraft, on the ground. I don't know what you call it, like a trainer.
Simulator.
Yeah, simulator. And 9 out of the 9, some of them ran into the hangars. Some are way left of the landing zone. It sets, so the spatial and the time and motion and everything was directly affected. And I remember that study, and that was early on, and that always stuck with me. About people that that would use that drug and slow down. Just like
that's
this,
right. That's right. But I guess there's like different strains now to where some of it affects you in different ways, and some of it even like gives you energy. I hear now. So I don't know a whole lot about it. I think that it's very interesting to me of the war on drugs, and you go back to Reagan's years in the early 80s and his wife Nancy and the war on drugs, and that now here we are in 2020 and the drugs are being, I'm wondering if there's a study or the statistics of what is going on in the drug trade now. Is the legalization of marijuana cut down on the illegal drugs being sold on the streets, and specifically marijuana, or is there still a lot of that going on? Do people still go and buy it from a dealer when they can go into a store and get it? Well,
I know that I was talking to some of the guys over at the Bureau, and they were talking just about that, and they said, that the black market on marijuana is more than what it's ever been at this time. That they were buying land in the western part of Oklahoma for cash. Bolivians, Russians, Chinese are buying land and then putting grows up, and they don't have enough people to go out and inspect those grows. And so they said that if they could get that marijuana up and grow it, cultivate it, and it cost them about $400 to do that, and then get it transport up to Boston, New York, Connecticut, somewhere up in there, the eastern part on the border, that you'd make $4,000. So that's incentive enough for these people to try to continue to do that. Though it's legal medically, they're growing it illegally, and producing it. And the black market on marijuana in Oklahoma right now is at an all-time high.
Wow. Even with it being available legally.
Yeah.
So I guess there has been studies done. So where does it go for you from here? Do you go back and consult at all? You've been retired for 5-10 years or something now. Do you consult? Do they still call on you? Do you write doctrines for it? Do you go speak on it?
No.
Well, how did the retirement go?
Painfully. I mean, you miss it every day. Do I really want to be back? No, not really. At one point in time, I was sent to polygraph school out in San Diego, and I got my polygraph license in probably 30 years ago, and I've continued to give polygraphs. And so the Bureau has called me. In fact, they've called me. They're going to hire 50 new agents to just do what we were talking about, and that is go out and inspect these illegal and illicit grows. And so they were needing pre-employment polygraphs. So I've been contacted to run all those polygraphs. Pre-employment polygraph. So I keep my hand in the game a little bit. I know all the agents over there. Though the longer you're gone and the longer you're retired, the further you get from the flagpole, it's a little bit more difficult to keep those relations going. But I still can go back over and feel at home.
Do you still think back on the career, and obviously it's been a very storied career? Any regrets, any changes to the professional career? Do you wish you would have went into another line of work at all? Did it ever cross your mind that you wish you would have been doing something else besides being the head of narcotics for 30 years in Oklahoma?
No, not really. I found my passion, and it took me a little while to do it. I taught and coached for 6 or 7 years, and then I went into sales for a year or two, and then got into police work, and that was where I was most happy. And the old saying, if you find something you like to do, then you really don't feel like you worked a day in your life. And I really do feel that way. I was teasing a little while ago when I said I stayed 30 years to see if I liked it. I really did like it. It was a good profession for me. I was good at it. And the secret is to be able to nurture, develop, and find good informants, because they know what's going on. Yeah. The agents don't. But if you find a good informant and you gain his trust the best you can, you can make some hellacious cases. And I was able to do that.
Good for you. Do you have any pictures laying around that you could show me of some of your disguises?
I think I do.
I think we're going to use one for this. Well, I don't know if that'd be smart to put them out there. I don't know what you can and can't do. Like,
well,
I don't know if you got to stay in kind of incognito still, so nobody ever knows that you know
we
were
were
one.
so. It was such a clandestine and secretive job that I remember I'd been there about maybe a year, and we had a couple of guys that were state troopers, and they wanted to come over and work, and so they let them come over and go to work for us for a 2-year period. Well, they finished their tour up, and we were working a pretty significant cocaine conspiracy. And when they left, I took over that case. And I was driving along one day, and the trooper was in behind me and pulled me over, and we sat inside the road and talked for a little while. And the next morning I went to work, and my boss said, the director wants to talk to you. And I said, okay. Well, I went down there, and he said, so what are you running your head about the investigation on so-and-so about? I said, I don't know. What are you talking about? And he said, well, this particular trooper called somebody and told them that you all were talking on the side of the road. And I said, yeah, I saw him last night. We did talk. And he said, don't you, on the way up the hall here to see me, did you not see those signs that said loose lips sink ships, security first, and all that stuff? And I said, sure. And he said, did that just kind of roll off the back of you or what? And I said, no. He said, well, we don't talk like that out of school. And he said, you've compromised this investigation horribly. He says, you go get that paper box down there by your desk and pack your stuff and get your ass out of here. Fired me.
Really?
Yes, sir. And I went, oh, my Lord. I mean, I walked down that hall. My legs, I could barely walk. I was just, oh, my gosh. This is the job I wanted. Here I am. I've made this terrible mistake. What am I ever going to do? I went down there and packed my stuff up and walked back up the hall. And he said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to put this stuff in my car and get out of here. And he said, you come in here a minute. And he braced me right there. And he said, you realize you made a terrible mistake? And I said, I sure do. And he said, we don't know what the damage is on that investigation. We might be able to repair it. But he said, don't you ever talk about a case again out of school. I said, yes, sir. He said, put your stuff back and go back to work. So from that point, which was about my first year or so, you talk about clandestine and secretive. I never even told my wife what I was doing.
Wow.
Never.
So she just happened to see you at the Sonic that day and thought, and then went, oh, shit, he's working.
Yeah.
Wow.
My kids would ask me questions. They were pretty good about it. They knew, I wouldn't say anything.
We'll come back with part 3. My man, Russ, what a freaking badass dude. We're going to hunt together tomorrow. Snows, lessers, honkers, and mallards. It's going to be 10 degrees in the morning. It's turning on here. It's a Fowl Life podcast. Check out this song. Todd Thompson and 2 a.m. Logic. My Fowl Life. Thank you, Russ. Let's go get this Canada Goose spaghetti ready. You want to do it?
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, buddy.